If you look at personality typology 10 years ago, it was really under the radar where you just had like this very small exclusive group of people. Like even myself, like barely knew about it. You only really had like practitioners going to schools and giving it to students or people using it in business. And then it kind of started to catch on as like this pop culture thing. And now recently in the past 2 years, we've seen huge breakouts with people like Frank James who have 800,000 subscribers doing exclusively MBTI and personality content. And I think that's going to be the trend upwards as we see more of these social media influencers approach personality typology. And I think it'll eventually get to the point where it'll become so popular that you're going to see this, the reluctance that people have is going to start to go down as it becomes more commonly known. And you're going to see more people, like school teachers, want to teach it in their psychology classes, for example. And as that happens, then we'll start to see more and more people become interested, and it'll just become something that's even bigger. The biggest issue is going to be the one that everyone faces when they first get into MBTI, and that you start with stereotypes. Because it's when you're working with a system that is types, when you don't know anything, you have to start with the stereotypes. So we'll see this period where people just start to kind of make things more basic, which is what we're going to see, I think, as it gets more popular. But then I think as long as there's people out there who are still interested in kind of teaching the core aspects of type, people can take that step themselves if they're interested. Or it's like, okay, now that I've kind of had the gateway drug into personality type, now I can really start to look deeper if I feel so inclined to do so. And even if you take 100 people, as long as and they get into type and most of them are into stereotypes, as long as a few of those people use it for personal growth or actually start to look deeper, that's when it starts to get interesting. And I think that's really what people like Frank James have done, is they've made the community a lot huger. And now we see people who are genuinely interested in personality typology beyond the stereotypes because it reached such a broad audience.
Actually, the way to do it would be to simply completely radicalize through complexity the means by which it's communicated, revolutionizing the way it's transmitted, seeing cognition and cognitive type not as something to be proved, but something to be measured using a falsifiable model. So it's not trying to assert, yeah, there are 16 types of people. It's not trying to assert NI is like that and SI is like that. It's more asserting the fact that, well, okay, hypothetically speaking, the extreme of NI would be like that, the extreme of SI might be like that. But maybe that's, sort of like, normal distribution or something. If you have that bell curve, loads of people are going to sort of like be, 40% SI, and loads of people are going to be like 40% NI. And very few people will be inhabiting either extreme of like what the full breadth of NI or the full intense, focus of SI. And that's another way of looking at it as well. So if you take it all on a spectrum, you can sell it to people in a better way, because suddenly it's something that can be funded, because it's a cool little way to kind of like to actually quantify these things without asserting and kind of conferring upon people the fact that they are going to be like this all the time, because they're not. It's going to change with context and it's going to change with experience. But from what I can see for so far with my data, we tend to stay in one of these 16 categories. They're a nice big kind of category. Okay, that's cool, great. But that's something that's not going to be proven until all the data's in, and the data needs a falsifiable model. And that falsifiable model, in my opinion, needs to be spectral. It needs to be graded. I don't think it can be a kind of you either using this function or using that function, because I think there's too much middle ground between two functions. Essentially, like you do have to make it more complex, because a major reason for the resistance it's accrued is not just because of the lack of like retestability, the fact that people are going to get a different type the next second and the next second and the next second using an online test or something like that, for example. But it's because there's actually a truth in that lack of retestability too. Like people are changing their cognition. People are changing their cognition all the time. They're changing their cognition according to a context, and they're changing their cognition according to their own individual development. I am using a different cognition to what I was 2 years ago. I was more TI-centric 2 years ago. I'm not as TI-centric anymore. I was more NI-centric 8 years ago. Now I'm maybe a little bit more SI-centric than I was back then. So my type is changing. So is it changed out of 16 categories? No, because these 16 categories are absolutely huge. So it's like, yeah, okay, I can move around within the category, but I'm still in the category. And then you have the whole extroversion, introversion thing, and that's the whole other ball game, because, I'm beginning to hypothesize we spend a lot of time in a relatively ambiverted state. That's why a lot of introverts like to play video games, for example. It's not like you're going in your internal world all the time. No, there's this interaction between you and there. It's just not that intensive there or not that intensive there.
So actually, I made a video today where I talked about how 16 personalities videos and YouTube are blowing up. And what I'm seeing is like a huge influx in interest for understanding personality types. Like the interest that I'm seeing today is nothing compared to what it was when I started out 10 years ago. There are so many people that are coming in today. And channels could in the past barely go past the 30,000 mark. Few channels were able to actually grow big, but there are channels today that are close to 1 million followers. These things are becoming huge, and what I also see is they're used everywhere. They're used at workplaces, they're used in schools. I see they're used by therapists. I see that they're being used and picked up everywhere. What I have to say is we have to make sure it's picked up the right way. So we have to avoid it becoming a stereotypical tool for quick labeling. We have to make sure that it's used in an ethical way. And when I look at companies and how it's applied today, sometimes that's not what I'm seeing. So that's the discouraging thing. Like I see a lot of people that are using it for social engineering. They see a lot of people that use it for quick labeling or to box people in. But the biggest perk is the individual value and the subjective value that person takes from something. So we have to make sure that that's what it keeps being. Luckily, what I'm seeing on YouTube and so on, the growth I'm seeing there is mostly positive. It's people are just, in general, they just want to know themselves. They just want to figure out what they want to do. And the change that's going to lead to is people are going to be a bit more individualistic and almost to an extreme degree, in the sense that they're going to be a bit more almost selfish, in the sense that they're going to choose things for themselves in the future. They're going to choose things for what they value. They're going to need different kind of motivators. Money is not going to be enough of a motivator in the future. You have to be able to cater to people's values and personality. You have to look at how to help people stay motivated. As an employer, it's not just enough to pay a good salary anymore. Like you have to make your coworkers feel like they enjoy what they do. So that's the big challenge. That's also what 16 personalities and MTI and typology can be used for, learning how to motivate people and to connect with others.